As I said, today's hearing really is timely, unfortunately, because of the challenges that we're now seeing. And I want to sort of bifurcate it into two steps. The first is what we can do, obviously, to help small business weather the coming storm that is going to be created by the fact that people are not going to be able to be together with one another in places, and that's obviously going to impact cash flows and the impact that has on employees, and in some cases, the threat it poses to a business's ability to continue to function. And I think that's of immediate concern. That's the one thing we got to deal with if we're triaging this problem right away. But I think we're beginning to see the outlines of a second problem, and that is what it means when your supply chain is disrupted. And we all just left a meeting of the entire Senate with leaders in our country in healthcare, and what's becoming evident and apparent is that one of the impediments to the widespread availability of testing is a supply chain unpredictability. It isn't just the tests. If you don't have cotton swabs, if you don't have protective gear for the lab technicians or the basic ingredients needed for the test, you're going to have a problem in conducting those tests. And from our perspective is the role that small business can play structurally now and for years to come in ensuring that these sorts of supply chain disruptions don't become a national threat to the country. A lot of it will be focused on China because that is where a lot of this activity has gone, but it's not just China. If you're India, if you're South Korea, if you're a country that also makes these things and you're facing this threat, you're going to hoard it. You're going to act in the best interest of your nation, and that's understandable. We need to start acting in the best interest of our nation in these regards, and so that's important. Later today, if we can bring it here, because I believe we can, we have been engaged before last night in conversations with the White House, with Ranking Member Cardin and his team, with individual members of this committee, with our counterparts in the House Small Business Committee, on what relief to small businesses should look like and how we can help them. And so hopefully later today, we're going to have an opportunity to present it, and the crux of it, as I've already outlined to some, is taking the commitments the President made last night and funneling it through our 7A program and our community banks, because they are in the community. They have, through Community Advantage and other related programs as well, have the ability to process the paper on this. We're going to have to give them a little flexibility. We're going to have to allow small businesses to use the funds they have borrowed to make payroll, to provide paid sick leave for employees that are hurt or employees that are sick or employees that, frankly, can't come to work. We're going to have to give them the flexibility to do that. We want to make sure that the money that's being lent is real and going to be paid back, but by the same token, and that's where the community bank process can help, but we also have to make it quick. These guys can't wait 90 days to get these funds, and workers can't wait 90 days for the paid sick leave that this will give these small businesses an opportunity. I'm not claiming this solves all the problems. It does help. If we're going to make that kind of commitment to small business, I believe that it should be in a way that's most effective and responsible with the taxpayer money, but also most helpful to those small businesses. On the supply chain issue, I think the backdrop to our general economy, even before, and this committee issued a report a year ago that warned about it, even before all of this, is that we are dangerously reliant, in particular, on China for the production of critical goods, and that includes goods, as I've already outlined, that are needed to fight the coronavirus. And I think we rely on far more goods than we know. And part of the economic pain that's going to be inflicted on the country as a result of these disruptions will be directly related to disruptions in the supply chain because of an outbreak that shut down factories that end up impacting the availability of important consumer goods. Just a brief review that our staff put together for this hearing. Last year, this is according to the Census Bureau, China accounted for 88% of electric hand drill and saw imports, 87% of air conditioning machinery imports, 83% of hydraulic jacks and hoists, 72% for cell phones and its parts, 58% of forklifts, 51% of lithium-ion batteries. The list goes on and on. Disruptions in these supply chains tell you that even after the virus is contained and starts coming under control, we could have shortages, and you know the industries that are relying upon this. This is where the spread of this becomes much more serious. So the focus is on three things that we really wanted to talk about. First is there the immediate consequence of not having the capacity to produce these essentials here at home. And small businesses are going to experience a great deal of economic pain as a result of supply chain disruptions. But there's also going to be increased demand for medical supplies and surgical masks and pharmaceutical drugs. And our small businesses can be a part of the answer to that, to filling in those gaps in the supply chain for critical sectors that have been exposed as weakened because of offshoring of our productive capacity to China and elsewhere. The absence of having these domestic businesses that can ramp up production to meet demand for these critical goods limits our ability to mitigate the worst effects of this virus beyond its broader economic impact. And the result is that the virus could end up being more damaging than it needed to be, and the economic impact as a result greater than it needed to be. As I pointed out earlier, we're already seeing this. One of the reasons why we've struggled to produce the testing kits is because we rely on foreign producers for the chemicals that are needed to make them. And there's a growing shortage because more people are testing, and as I said earlier, the countries that have it are going to be less willing to provide it. So I truly believe that one of the things we should look at after we provide the initial set is what can we do through the SBA, through the work of this committee, and it has to be bipartisan, there's no other way to do it, to help small business be a growth sector in our economy to meet some of this increased demand. Second, obviously, that we will discuss, and I'm sure you will point to, is the long-term consequences of the vulnerability, particularly when it comes to China. This wasn't the accidental byproduct of globalization. It's an outcome of a deliberate strategy on their part, which made biomedicine and high-end medical equipment a priority in their Made in China 2025 plan. They put it in writing. It's long been practiced. It encourages domestic companies and their predatory practices and provides a short-term bargain for foreign companies, but big-time costs for our nation and the world. For years, China's been able to entice American multinational corporations with access to its markets in exchange for offshoring and sharing intellectual property. And we've watched as Beijing captured critical portions of the global supply chain. Today, 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in the United States and the drugs that are here are sourced somewhere else. And a lot of that is China. And now, in the face of the pandemic, as I said, the absence of this capacity in the medical sector is endangering our healthcare system, and that is something we have to figure out in the short term and forever. So it's hopefully something that we are able to act on to find out what role can small business play in growth and in taking back the ability to make these critical goods in the United States right now and in the future. So I hope that we can come up with a second wave of proposals that will empower small businesses to bring their production of critical goods all in-house and getting American multinationals to buy domestically from them, not as a matter of economic protectionism, but as a matter of national security and national economic stability. This is good for our public health, it's good for our economy, it's good for, as I said, our national security, and it's good for our people. So I look forward to hearing from our witnesses who are experts on these topics about what we can do to help small business be a part of solving this challenge. And now I turn it to the ranking member.